Have you ever wanted to relive the past by playing an old video game system? You probably hooked the console up to a flat screen TV, inserted the game, and noticed that the image looked kind of awful. This is because all old game consoles were designed specifically for cathode ray tube televisions, CRT TVs. When you watch a TV show on a CRT TV, the resolution it's designed to run at is 480i. This means two fields of 240 lines rapidly alternating to create the illusion of 480 lines of pixels. However, old video game consoles ran at 240p. This essentially means that only one of these fields were used and they didn't alternate, creating a progressive image that had scan lines in between each row of graphics. When most people think of retro games, they think of the NES and its 8-bit graphics. It's home to some of the most iconic retro games of all time, such as Super Mario Bros., Mega Man 2, and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! The NES, like many other consoles of the era, had a light gun accessory, and because of the way it works, it actually only works on CRT televisions. It requires the display to have an instantaneous response time, which isn't a problem for CRTs. However, flat-screen TVs digitally process the image, and that causes input delay, which makes it so that no matter how good you aim, you're never gonna hit the ducks. As the 1980s came to a close, the 16-bit era of games began, with the Sega Genesis. The Genesis is home to the Sonic the Hedgehog series, which was a worthy competitor to Nintendo's Mario. The Genesis's video output is actually blurrier than most other consoles of the era. While this seems like a disadvantage, developers for the system actually took advantage of this. They knew that the blurriness would blend certain colors together, and they used this in order to create transparency effects. Look at this waterfall in Sonic the Hedgehog. You can see through it. However, when you look at it with sharp pixels, it's not transparent anymore. This is just one of the many examples of developers taking advantage of the unique attributes of a console. While the Genesis was the first 16-bit console, when the Super Nintendo Entertainment System came along, it ended up being much more powerful. Because of this, it's home to some of the best-looking 2D games of all time. For example, Super Mario World 2: Yoshi's Island. The next generation of video game systems brought two major innovations: three-dimensional graphics that haven't really aged well by today's standards, and games stored on discs instead of cartridges. This allowed for more storage space, higher quality music, and a cheaper manufacturing cost. While 3D games were the most popular, there were still a few 2D games coming out, and when they did release, they looked amazing. Probably the best looking game of this generation is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, with its detailed sprites and ultra smooth animations. The next generation of game systems brought even more detailed 3D graphics that actually look pretty good, along with the fact that consoles were finally outputting 480i instead of 240p, finally able to take full advantage of a CRT's resolution. In fact, we even saw some consoles go beyond standard definition and include support for 480p. This mode is actually made for flat screens, and it can't be displayed on a standard definition CRT due to the fact that their maximum resolution is 480i. However, it should still be noted that most people who played these consoles at the time used CRTs, and CRTs can still be considered essential to the unique look of those consoles. Ever since then, a CRT has become less and less necessary for playing video games. Eventually, HD consoles came along, and then analog outputs were dropped altogether. However, there's still multiple decades worth of games, including some of the best games ever made, that are best played on a good old-fashioned CRT.